Imagine for a second that you suffer a really painful sports injury.
Oh, nobody wants to imagine that.
Right, but just stick with me. Let's say you tweak your shoulder, and not just like a mild soreness, but a deep, sharp structural ache right deep inside the joint.
Ouch. Yeah. Like the kind where even reaching for a coffee mug makes you wince.
Exactly.
Right.
Reaching for a mug, putting on a jacket, it all hurts. So you step onto the court the next week for your regular game, and you're fully expecting to play, well, absolutely terribly.
Because you can't even lift your arm properly.
Right. You can't lift it, let alone swing a racket with any kind of force. You figure you're just going to survive the hour, maybe gently tap the shuttlecock over the net, act as a decoy if you're playing doubles, and then just go home to ice it.
Makes sense.
But instead, and this is where it gets weird, something completely bizarre happens. You end up playing the best game of your entire life.
Wait, really? With a bad shoulder?
Yes. Your shots are faster, your accuracy is suddenly pinpoint, and your explosive power is somehow like completely off the charts.
That doesn't make any sense.
I know, right? How is that physically possible? I mean, our brains are wired to think that a physical limitation, an injury, basically should degrade performance, not enhance it.
Well, yeah. We think of the human body as an engine. You need all the cylinders firing at 100% capacity to get maximum output.
Exactly. It feels like a paradox. We all operate under this assumption of, more effort equals more results.
Right. If you want to hit harder, you engage more muscles, take a bigger windup, use your body's largest levers to their maximum potential.
So the idea that stripping away your biggest physical asset could somehow catapult you into an elite tier of performance, it just completely defies conventional athletic logic.
It really does. But I know where you're going with this.
Yeah, which brings us to today's deep dive mission. We are exploring a truly fascinating set of notes that crossed our desk recently.
These notes are incredible, by the way.
They really are. They document this incredibly detailed conversation between a dedicated badminton player and an AI. And they basically deconstructed the biomechanics of their swing following a shoulder injury.
And we're going to unpack how a painful restriction, like an injury that literally forced this player to stop moving their arm, accidentally unlocked one of the most closely guarded secrets of athletic power.
Yeah, the elite secrets. So let's just lay out the core thesis we extracted from these sources.
Right. It revolves around this biomechanical concept that separates amateur players from the absolute highest level of professionals.
And what's the phrase they use in the translation?
It's defined as locking the large joints to hit with the small joints.
Locking the large joints to hit with the small joints. Okay.
Exactly. We're going to deconstruct the physics, the spatial geometry, and the neurology of how artificially restricting your biggest muscles generates infinitely more explosive power than swinging freely ever could.
So let's ground this in the actual experience the user documented. Due to this sharp shoulder pain, they had to completely abandon their normal swing.
They had to. It hurt too much.
Right. To avoid the pain, they basically kept their upper arm pinned tight against their body, like it was glued or strapped to their rib cage.
Yeah, they were physically incapable of taking a large swing.
And to their absolute shock, their drives and smashes, which, by the way, are the fastest, most power-hungry shots in the game, they dramatically improved in speed and lethality.
Which is wild.
It is. And my immediate instinct is to push back on this. Because if I want to hit something hard, human instinct and physics both seem to suggest I need a massive windup.
Like throwing a baseball.
Exactly. Think about throwing a baseball from the outfield all the way to home plate. You don't pin your arm to your side.
No, you'd throw it like 5 feet.
Right. You step back, you pull your arm way behind your head, load up your hips, and launch your entire body mass forward through this huge arc. So how does restricting the arm to zero windup create a faster projectile?
Well, that baseball analogy actually perfectly illustrates the trap that amateur racket sports players fall into.
How so?
Because you're describing a motion designed to hurl a relatively heavy object over a massive distance, right, using continuous acceleration.
Yeah.
But racket sports, particularly badminton, operate on a totally different physical paradigm. The sources referred to the amateur habit as the push-squeeze motion.
Push-squeeze?
Yeah. An amateur inherently believes that power in a racket swing comes from a long, continuous acceleration phase.
Yeah.
So they recruit their entire arm, from the shoulder joint down to the wrist, to essentially push the shuttlecock through the air.
Oh, I see. It's like they're trying to shove a heavy box across the floor. You lean into it and apply sustained force over a long distance.
Exactly like that. But a badminton shuttle is incredibly light. And the racket is basically a tension spring.
Right.
So applying sustained sweeping force with the whole arm creates this massive sloppy radius. It takes a significant amount of time to execute that huge sweeping arc.
And time is exactly what you don't have in these
Mm.
games.
Precisely. More importantly, it takes a massive amount of time and energy to recover from it.
Mm.
Your body weight is dragged forward, your balance is totally compromised, and your racket is entirely out of position for the next shot.
So, by pinning the upper arm to the rib cage purely out of self-preservation because of the pain, the player accidentally eliminated that inefficient push.
Yes. They removed the sweeping arc entirely. And in doing so, they created what the sources call a highly stable physical bracket.
A physical bracket, okay. So the upper arm transforms from being the primary engine of the swing into a static foundation.
Right.
But wait, if the upper arm isn't doing the swinging, where's the kinetic energy actually coming from? Because, I mean, you can't just generate power from a static bracket.
Well, this leads us to the fundamental physics principle at play here.
Yeah.
The conservation of angular momentum and the concept of the brake pad.
The brake pad.
Yeah, it's the biomechanical secret behind what professionals call the stick smash. Amateurs look at a professional swinging and think the upper arm is the whip that strikes the shuttle.
Sure, because it looks like it is.
Right. But the revelation in the notes is that the upper arm is not the whip at all. The upper arm is the brake.
Wait, the brake? You're saying the biggest, most muscular segment of the arm is used to stop the swing, not to accelerate it.
I know, it feels completely counterintuitive.
It really does. How does that work?
Let's break down the standard kinetic chain of an elite strike. True power never originates in the arm. It starts from the ground up, right?
Right, transferring through the legs and into the core.
Exactly. The player violently rotates their torso. That massive rotational force brings the heavy upper arm moving forward at high speed.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
But here's the critical difference. Instead of letting that upper arm swing all the way through, the professional suddenly stops the upper arm dead in its tracks right before impact.
Just freeze it.
They slam on the brakes. Now, physics dictates that all that massive kinetic energy generated by the torso rotation cannot just disappear.
It has to go somewhere.
Exactly. Because the heavy mass of the upper arm has abruptly stopped. That energy compresses and transfers instantly into the much lighter distal sections of the arm.
Meaning the forearm, the wrist, and the fingers.
Yes.
Okay, that makes me think of, it's like a car crash.
A car crash?
Yeah, think about it. If a car is speeding down the highway at 60 miles an hour and suddenly hits a concrete barrier, the car stops dead.
Right.
But an unrestrained passenger inside that car or in this biomechanical model, the forearm doesn't stop. It gets launched forward at an incredibly violent velocity.
Oh, that is a phenomenal way to visualize it. Yes.
The sudden deceleration of the large mass forces the acceleration of the small mass.
Exactly. The sudden braking of the large mass accelerates the smaller mass to a velocity it could never possibly achieve on its own through muscular contraction alone.
Wow.
The sources describe this specific transfer as turning the forearm into a lightning whip.
The lightning whip. That's a great term.
So when the player pinned their arm against their rib cage because of their shoulder injury, they were unknowingly forcing their upper arm to act as an immediate dead brake.
Because the rib cage acted as the concrete barrier.
Exactly. The rotational energy from their body had absolutely nowhere else to go but violently down the arm, cascading into the smallest joints.
You know, what I find most fascinating about this is the neurological aspect.
Oh, yeah. The brain's response.
Right. The sources suggest that because the large arm is immobilized and constrained, the brain is essentially forced into a state of structural panic.
Structural panic. I like that.
Yeah, the brain realizes, uh-oh, I have this incoming projectile, I need to hit it hard, but my main shoulder engine is offline. So it adapts.
It has to.
It fires signals to the terminal nerves. It forces the forearm into incredibly rapid pronation and supination.
Which is that twisting inward and outward motion.
Right, and it triggers a violent, reflexive squeezing of the fingers on the racket grip right at the millisecond of impact. The notes call this finger power.
Or, in martial arts terminology, kunjin, which translates to inch power.
Inch power.
Yeah. Inch power is arguably the holy grail of all racket sports, and martial arts for that matter. It represents this explosion of maximal energy compressed into an incredibly minuscule spatial radius.
Because you aren't winding up your entire arm and pushing through the shuttle.
Exactly. The racket behaves less like a baseball bat and more like a tightly coiled spring that suddenly snaps. It's a microscopic, nearly invisible movement that generates a devastatingly fast, flat trajectory.
That's incredible.
The physical constraint forces the nervous system to hyperactivate the fast-twitch muscle fibers in the hand and forearm that usually just lie dormant when the big shoulder muscles are doing all the crude, heavy lifting.
So let's talk about the tactical implications of this on the court. Because if you're a player, this isn't just about hitting the shuttle harder, right? It creates the ultimate form of deception.
Oh, absolutely. The poker face aspect.
Yeah. Think about the geometry of a typical game, especially in doubles where the shuttle is flying back and forth at lightning speed. If an opponent is about to hit the shuttle and you see them drop their shoulder, pull their arm way back, and puff out their chest,
Your brain immediately registers, okay, a massive smash is coming.
right, you brace yourself, you prepare to defend. But what if their arm never moves?
Then you have nothing.
Exactly. If there is zero telegraphed windup because the upper arm is locked to the ribs, you have absolutely no data to read.
It induces absolute paralysis in the opponent. The sources specifically note this psychological advantage. The rhythm of the shot changes entirely.
Because there's no wind-up time.
Right. The clothing hanger, which is how the notes describe the body's main structural frame, remains completely static and unchanged. The entire shot is dictated by fingertip micromanipulation.
Fingertip micromanipulation, wow.
So from across the net, a delicate drop shot, a high-speed flat drive, and a lethal stick smash. They all look structurally identical, right up until the final 100th of a second.
It's literal physical poker. You
Yeah.
are maintaining a perfect biomechanical poker face.
Yes.
The opponent is staring at you, waiting for a tell in your shoulder or your elbow, but there is no tell because those joints are locked down as brake pads.
And by the time the forearm snaps and the shuttle is off the strings, it's already past them.
Because they can't prejudge the trajectory, the speed, or the depth of the shot.
Right. They're forced to react only after the shuttle has left the racket, which, at those speeds, is often mathematically too late.
Man, that is just brutal. Okay, so the injury forced the use of the brake pad, which unlocked the finger power and the deception.
Yep.
But the user realized something else in the notes, and the AI strongly validated it. It's a concept that merges biomechanics with spatial awareness.
The geometry of power.
Let's call it that, yeah. The geometry of power.
Hmm.
The user noticed that by keeping their arm pinned against their body, they didn't just change how they swung, they were physically forced to change where their racket met the shuttlecock in three-dimensional space.
The sources refer to this as the space and power loop.
Space and power loop.
Yeah, it's the realization that biomechanical efficiency dictates spatial geometry and vice versa.
Hmm.
When the user pinned their arm, it completely altered their strike zone.
So let's visualize the amateur strike zone first, just to understand the difference here.
An idea.
If I take that big sweeping amateur windup we talked about earlier, my elbow naturally drifts backward, I open up my chest, my shoulder pulls back, and my elbow ends up way behind the plane of my head.
Right, creating a massive arc.
Because my arm is extending so far backward to gather power, I'm creating this huge margin of error. If my timing is even slightly off, I end up hitting the shuttle late, like when it's already beside my body, or worse, falling behind me.
And we really have to look at the mechanics of what happens when the shuttle falls beside or behind you.
What happens?
Well, when the contact point is that late, your forearm has zero physical space left to snap forward. You have entirely exhausted your anatomical runway.
Oh, because the arm is already fully extended behind you.
Exactly. So to get the shuttle over the net from that compromised position, you are forced to use the brute slow strength of your shoulder to drag the heavy racket forward.
Which bleeds all the speed from the shot.
It kills the speed, and dragging a lever from behind your body is incredibly inefficient and highly stressful on the shoulder capsule.
But, and here's the genius of the constraint, if my upper arm is physically locked against my rib cage, my elbow cannot possibly reach behind my head.
It's a hard anatomical boundary.
Right. I literally cannot make the mistake of winding up too far. Because my arm is tethered to my side, my brain instantly processes the geometry and realizes, uh-oh, if I wait for the shuttle to get right next to me, I'm going to miss it entirely because my arm can't reach back there.
So what does the body do?
It instinctively forces me to reach out and meet the shuttle early out in the front of my body.
Exactly. It acts as an enforced physical constraint that automatically corrects your timing. The source material highlights this as a profound moment of realization for the player. You are no longer relying on your prefrontal cortex to remember a verbal coaching cue, like, make sure you hit the shuttle out in front.
Which is a huge relief, honestly. Because in the middle of a chaotic rally, your conscious brain is totally focused on where the opponent is standing, not where your elbow is positioned. Verbal cues just vanish when the adrenaline spikes.
They absolutely do.
Hmm.
So instead of relying on conscious memory, artificially limiting your range of motion means your body's physical geometry guarantees correct execution.
The limited space dictates the optimal action.
Right. It functions as a literal physical hack for muscle memory. Because you cannot physically hit the shuttle late, you are forced to hit it early. You intercept it right in the optimal strike zone, which is the upper front quadrant of your vision.
And meeting the shuttle in that front quadrant completely transforms the physics of the impact. The AI in the notes breaks down why this front contact point is so devastating.
Yeah, the wall analogy.
Exactly. For a flat drive shot, hitting out in front of your body is described as pushing against a solid wall. You have all your body weight behind the racket, giving you incredible leverage.
And for smashes, the geometry gets even better.
How so?
If you intercept the shuttle slightly in front of your body, rather than directly overhead, your racket face naturally possesses a downward angle at the point of contact. You don't have to contort your wrist awkwardly to try and spike it down.
Oh, wow. So all the vectors of force just align perfectly. Gravity is pulling the shuttle down, your body weight is naturally leaning forward into the shot, and that explosive forearm snap is directing energy through a racket face that is inherently angled toward the floor.
Yes, it all converges on a single point to spike the shuttle sharply downward with minimal effort.
It's a beautiful closed-loop system. The constraint creates the geometry, and the geometry maximizes the power.
It's elegant.
But reading through these notes, there is a glaring, massive loophole that the user rightfully points out.
The altitude problem.
The altitude problem, exactly. This pinned arm geometry works perfectly for shots that are roughly at chest or eye level. But what if my opponent hits a defensive lob, sending the shuttle soaring high and deep toward the back line?
Right.
If my arm is glued to my ribs, how on earth do I hit it? If I stay pinned, I have to stand there and wait for the shuttle to drop all the way down to my waist before I can strike it. By then, I've lost all my offensive advantage. I'm just scooping the shuttle off the floor.
It is the critical flaw in the pinned arm strategy if a player takes the rule too literally. You cannot play an overhead sport with your arm perpetually bound to your torso.
Obviously not.
This is where the AI in the notes provides the professional fix, bridging the gap between constraint and necessary reach.
Okay, so what's the fix?
To hit high overhead shots, the arm obviously must leave the rib cage, but, and this is the foundational distinction, the player cannot revert to flapping their arm wide open like a bird taking flight to reach out.
Which is what amateurs do.
Right. High-level players use a specific mechanical technique translated as pushing the elbow forward, or dingzu.
Dingzu. Okay, walk me through the mechanics of dingzu. How is pushing the elbow forward fundamentally different from just lifting my arm up to reach the shuttle?
We have to look at the structural shape the arm makes. When you hold your racket in a ready position in front of you, your upper arm and your forearm form a tight V, or an L shape.
Right, bent at the elbow.
The mistake amateurs make when a high shot approaches is that they lift from the shoulder joint itself. They shrug their shoulder up, and they let that tight V shape unfold and expand as they take a massive open swing at the sky.
They open up like a giant umbrella catching the wind. The structure completely collapses in the pursuit of reach.
Precisely. But the professional technique maintains the structural integrity of that tight V shape. Instead of lifting the shoulder and unfolding the arm, the professional takes that entire loft V structure and simply pushes the point of the elbow diagonally forward and upward.
So the point of the elbow is acting like a targeting laser pointing directly at the falling shuttlecock.
Yes, they elevate the upper arm so it functions as an elevated launch pad aimed directly at the target. The upper arm separates from the rib cage, reaching an angle of perhaps 45 to 60 degrees from the chest, but the arm remains tight, structurally sound, and highly compact.
It never swings wide.
Never.
That is a phenomenal visual. Instead of opening a giant umbrella, it's much more like throwing a dart.
Oh, the dart analogy is great.
Yeah, when you stand at a dartboard, you don't take a windmill swing. Your elbow points directly at the bullseye, the upper arm acts as a totally rigid, stabilizing structure, and your forearm and fingers do all the precise flicking.
Exactly. Or, for another sports comparison, think of a modern volleyball jump serve.
Oh, yeah.
The player leaps into the air, the elbow points the way, the upper arm is a rigid scaffold, and the forearm fires forward like a catapult.
The dart and volleyball analogies are mechanically perfect. In both cases, the upper arm has achieved the necessary altitude to reach the target. but its biomechanical function remains exactly the same as when the badminton player had their arm pinned to their ribs.
It serves as a brake.
It serves as a brake. It provides the rigid, immovable structure necessary for the forearm to whip around and generate velocity.
You've got it perfectly.
Okay, I understand the theory, but I have a major mechanical question here.
Go for it.
When the arm was physically pinned against the rib cage, the ribs acted as a literal physical brick wall. The upper arm hit the ribs, stopped, and the energy transferred.
Okay.
But now, using this pushing the elbow technique, the upper arm is elevated and floating in midair. How do you abruptly stop a heavy upper arm in midair to create that necessary brake pad whip effect without a physical anchor to brace against?
That is the big question.
Right. If I swing my arm up, momentum dictates it's going to want to carry forward. My brain can't just tell a moving limb to instantly freeze in space.
That is the exact problem of kinetic control in three-dimensional space, and it highlights the hidden complexity of professional technique.
Because there's no wall.
Exactly. When you lose the rib cage as your physical barricade, the brain struggles to arrest the forward momentum of the arm. To solve this, the source material reveals that elite players utilize what we can conceptualize as virtual anchor.
Virtual anchors.
Since they don't have a physical wall, they artificially create braking forces in midair using three distinct, highly coordinated methods.
I love this concept. How do we build a structural break out of thin air? What is the first virtual anchor?
The first virtual anchor utilizes the non-hitting hand, and it's a masterpiece of cross-body kinetic chaining.
The non-hitting hand.
Yeah. Let's assume you are a right-handed player. When you reach up for that high overhead shot, your left hand is typically reaching up toward the shuttle as well, acting as a tracking mechanism.
Okay, my left arm is up.
In the exact fraction of a second before your right forearm snaps forward to strike the shuttle, you violently pull your left arm down and sharply into your left rib cage.
Wait, so while my right arm is firing forward, I am violently throwing my non-dominant arm in the exact opposite direction?
Yes. You contract your left latissimus dorsi muscle and pull the left arm tight against your body. This sudden, violent muscular contraction on the left side of your body pulls the fascia tight across your back and creates a massive cross-body counterforce.
Wow.
It instantly stabilizes your core and acts as a counterweight that indirectly locks your right shoulder in place. It's like pulling a heavy tether. The right arm's momentum wants to drag the shoulder forward, but the massive anchor of your left arm slamming into your torso arrests that forward movement dead in its tracks.
That is incredible. It's like using your own body weight to slam on the emergency brake. It creates a tension bridge across the back that freezes the right shoulder so the right forearm can whip out unhindered. You know, if you watch a baseball pitcher, they do something similar. They violently pull their glove hand into their chest right as they release the ball to stabilize their trunk.
It's the exact same kinetic principle.
Amazing. Okay, so what is the second virtual anchor?
The second is a bone lock. This relies heavily on spatial awareness and skeletal anatomy.
Bone lock, okay.
When you push your right elbow forward and upward to point at the shuttle, you push it to its absolute spatial limit within that compact structural framework. You extend the joint until it essentially feels full or reaches its natural anatomical boundary without breaking the V-shape.
Oh, I see. So you aren't relying on muscle tension to stop the arm. You're resting on the joint structure itself.
Exactly. Relying on muscles to hold an arm perfectly still against high-velocity momentum is incredibly difficult and fatiguing.
Plus, muscles can twitch or give out.
Right. Instead, you rely on the fact that your bones and ligaments have reached a structural limit in that specific plane of motion. The elbow is effectively pinned in that spatial coordinate by its own anatomy.
That makes total sense.
It acts as the rigid hinge of a door. The frame of the door is immobilized by the bone lock, allowing the door itself, your forearm, to swing open with incredible speed and zero structural wobble.
You take the unreliable muscles out of the equation and use your skeleton as the primary braking mechanism. That is brilliant. And the third virtual anchor.
The third anchor is perhaps the most psychological, but it is highly effective biomechanically.
Yep.
The impact lock.
Impact lock.
This involves timing your ultimate muscular effort, that intense, violent finger squeeze on the racket grip we discussed earlier, precisely with the physical shock of the shuttlecock hitting the strings of the racket.
Wait, you're using the actual collision with the projectile to stop your own arm.
Yes. Amateurs tend to push their arm completely through the shuttle, trying to force the racket forward long after the shuttle has left the strings. But professionals anticipate the physical collision.
They're waiting for the hit.
They wait for that microsecond bang on the string bed, and at that exact moment, they squeeze the grip with maximum force. They utilize the physical vibration, the recoil, and the tiny amount of resistance from hitting the shuttle as a sensory trigger to instantly freeze their entire arm.
That is just wow.
It's a perfect mental and physical synchronization where the impact itself becomes the sensory wall that stops the arm.
So even when your arm is floating freely in the air, you are still engineering ways to build that concrete barrier for the car crash.
Exactly.
You are pulling the opposite arm to create a cross-body tether, you are locking the skeletal structure at its boundary, or you are using the collision of the shuttle itself to freeze the big joint and whip the small joints.
It's an architecture of constraints.
An architecture of constraints. I love that. And what is truly remarkable about this entire biomechanical shift from the big, sweeping, whole-arm amateur swing to this highly compact, locked elbow-forward technique is the profound medical revelation it brought about for the user in the notes.
Right. The medical marvel.
Yes. We cannot lose sight of how this whole deep dive started. The user didn't adopt this weird pinned arm style because a coach told them to. They did it because their shoulder was in absolute agonizing pain.
They had to.
But the notes highlight an incredible piece of data. After adopting this new elbow pushed forward technique, the user reported that their severe shoulder pain completely vanished.
Poof, gone.
It didn't just lessen, it evaporated. How is that mechanically possible? Because I mean, if you are utilizing these virtual anchors, breaking the arm violently and hitting the shuttle harder and faster than ever before, logic dictates your shoulder should hurt significantly more.
You would certainly think so. But this leads us to a fascinating anatomy lesson, and what we might call the medical marvel of the scapular plane.
The scapular plane.
Yes. To understand the cure, we first have to look at why the amateur swing causes pain in the first place. When an amateur wants to hit a high overhead shot, their natural instinct is to lift their arm perfectly sideways, straight out from the side of their body, and then raise it up toward the ceiling.
Like doing a jumping jack motion.
Basically, in anatomical terms, this motion is called pure abduction.
Okay, so if you're listening to this right now and you're sitting in a chair where you have some space, try this. Lift your arm perfectly straight out to your side, like you're trying to make a T shape with your body, and then slowly raise it up towards your ear. You can almost feel a pinch or a block in the top of your shoulder as you get higher.
Yeah, that pinch is a structural flaw in human anatomy. When you raise your arm perfectly sideways in pure abduction, the top of your upper arm bone, the humerus, rotates and violently smashes into the acromion, which is the bony protrusion that forms the roof of your shoulder joint.
It's literally bone colliding with bone.
It is worse than bone on bone.
Worse.
Yeah. Running right through that incredibly narrow gap between the head of the humerus and the acromion roof are your delicate rotator cuff tendons, specifically the supraspinatus tendon.
Oh, no.
When you raise your arm sideways and swing forcefully, you are essentially crushing those tendons between two hard bones, like they're caught in the blades of a pair of scissors.
That makes me wince just visualizing it.
This repeated crushing is known clinically as impingement syndrome. It grinds the tendons, causes severe inflammation, micro tears, and leads to exactly the kind of sharp, deep, agonizing pain the user was experiencing.
You are basically chewing up your own shoulder joint every single time you swing your arm out to the side.
Pretty much.
So what structurally changes when they adopt the professional technique and push the elbow forward instead of lifting it to the side?
This is where we discover the biomechanical safe haven known as the scapular plane.
The scapular plane. What is that exactly?
Well, human shoulder blades, the scapulae, do not sit perfectly flat on our backs. Because our rib cages are curved, cylindrical structures, our shoulder blades naturally angle forward by roughly 30 to 45 degrees to wrap around the ribs.
Right. If you look down at your collarbones, your shoulders don't point straight out to the sides. They naturally curved inward toward your chest a little bit.
Exactly. So when the user stopped lifting their arm purely out to the side and instead pushed their elbow forward, pointing it diagonally out in front of their chest to reach the shuttle, their arm naturally entered the scapular plane.
Ah, I see.
This 30 to 45 degree forward angle is a golden, friction-free zone for the shoulder joint. In this specific plane of motion, the head of the humerus does not collide with the acromion roof. The anatomical gap remains wide open.
It's like finding a secret anatomical tunnel that completely bypasses the traffic jam.
That's a perfect way to put it.
If you try it right now, point your elbow 45 degrees forward and raise it, it feels completely hollow and frictionless. The tendons have all the room in the world to glide and stretch without getting pinched or crushed by the bones.
It is true mechanical freedom. And because there is zero impingement, there is zero friction, and therefore zero pain.
Yeah.
The joint operates within its intended evolutionary parameters.
Which allows the player to do what?
It allows them to break the upper arm and violently snap their forearm with maximum explosive force without literally tearing their own anatomy apart.
This is such a massive, profound takeaway for anyone listening. Regardless of what sport you play, whether you're lifting weights or just dealing with physical discomfort in your daily life, pain is not a weakness leaving the body. Pain is an incredible, highly calibrated biomechanical alarm system.
It's telling you something is wrong.
Right. If you are performing a repetitive motion and it hurts sharply, it is highly likely that your skeletal structure is misaligned. You are grinding your anatomical gears. But if the motion feels effortless, if there is no pain even when you are applying massive force, you have found the alignment that matches human anatomy.
Your body is confirming, yes, this is how I was mechanically designed to operate.
The injury was a blessing in disguise. The pain acted as an unyielding coach, forcing the user into the anatomically correct position.
Absolutely.
And this core concept, keeping the elbow pushed forward and staying safely within that powerful scapular plane, it becomes exponentially more critical and significantly more difficult to conceptualize when we transition to the hardest shot in the game.
Oh yes, the backhand clear.
Yes. The ultimate boss battle of racket sports. We have to address the backhand clear to the baseline.
Everyone hates this shot.
For anyone who has ever held a badminton or squash racket, you know the feeling. The opponent hits the shuttlecock deep into your backhand corner, forcing you to run backward, completely turn your back to the net, and somehow generate enough power to hit the shuttle all the way to the other end of the court.
It feels geometrically and physically impossible. You feel totally powerless.
You really do. So how on earth does this lock arm, elbow forward rule apply when your body is literally facing the wrong direction?
It is universally recognized as the nemesis of all amateur players, and for a very definable mechanical reason. When amateurs find themselves forced into a backhand clear, panic sets in, and they revert to that same flawed foundational instinct, the massive windup.
Right, because you're facing backward, you feel weak, you think you need a huge swing.
Exactly. Because they are facing backward and feel weak, they believe they need to swing their entire arm from the shoulder down in a huge, desperate sweeping arc to heave the shuttle over the net.
You just want to throw your whole arm at it in sheer desperation.
But the source material brilliantly identifies this reaction as the dead stick error.
A dead stick error.
When you swing your entire arm backward in a sweeping arc, the lever is so long and unwieldy that it takes up too much spatial room, and your elbow cannot bend. Your entire arm essentially becomes a rigid, unbendable stick.
Hence, dead stick.
Right. Because it's a massive, slow-moving lever, your timing is immediately destroyed. The shuttle drops past your ideal strike zone before the racket can get there. You end up hitting the shuttle late.
And what happens then?
Because your arm is a straight, locked stick, you have absolutely zero snap, zero whip, and zero explosive power. You were just trying to awkwardly shove the shuttle over the net with the back of your hand.
And usually it just flutters weakly into the net or pops up short for the opponent to smash, and you feel ridiculous.
Exactly. It's terrible.
So how do we dismantle the dead stick error? The AI in the notes outlines a 3-step backhand fix that relies on everything we've discussed so far, but inverted.
It's a beautiful application of the brake pad concept and the virtual anchors, just operating in reverse.
Okay, walk me through it. Step 1.
Step 1 is what the notes describe as the intimate tuck. When you are running back to that deep corner, turning your back to the net, you must ruthlessly suppress the instinct to let your arm fly around. You keep your upper arm resting naturally and closely against your ribs.
So you are preemptively killing the urge to take a massive swing before it even has a chance to start. You are containing the kinetic energy.
You are locking down the big joint immediately. Step 2 is elbow artillery. As the shuttle falls from the sky, you do not swing your arm back to intercept it. Instead, you take that tucked elbow and you push it diagonally upward to point at the shuttle.
Okay, wait. I need to visualize this carefully. I'm facing the back wall of the court. My opponent and the net are behind me. Is my elbow pointing out to my side toward the net?
No, and this is where the anatomy fails if you get it wrong. If you point your elbow out to your side toward the net while you face the back wall, you exit the safe scapular plane, enter pure abduction, risk impingement, and lose all structural power.
Oh, because you're doing that sideways chicken wing lift again.
Exactly. Instead, you lift your elbow toward your own chest, directly into your line of vision. Even though your body's facing the back wall, your elbow is pointing up and out in front of your own chest, tracking the falling shuttle.
Let me make sure I have this geometry right. So my arm is directly in front of my body, even though in front of my body currently means pointing at the back wall away from the net.
That is correct. Your elbow is the artillery cannon elevating and pointing at the target in front of your chest.
Okay.
Then comes the critical step 3, the snap. As your elevated elbow reaches its peak altitude pointing at the shuttle, the upper arm violently breaks. It locks completely in space.
The car hits the concrete barrier again.
Exactly. And because the upper arm stops dead, the forearm is violently forced to snap outward to dissipate the energy. In biomechanics, this outward rolling motion is called rapid supination.
Right.
Your forearm uncoils outward like a released torsion spring, and at the exact microsecond of impact, your thumb violently pushes against the grip of the racket. The energy transfer is instantaneous, compressed, and massive.
Okay, I follow the physics of the snap. The brake pad makes sense. But I have a major logistical problem here.
What is it?
And the user in the notes brought this up too, because if you try to pantomime this motion, it breaks your brain a little bit. If my back is to the net and my elbow is pointing forward relative to my chest, meaning toward the back wall,
Yeah.
when my forearm snaps out, isn't the racket face going to hit the shuttle completely sideways?
Yeah.
If I do this motion right now, my palm ends up facing the side wall of the court, not the net behind me. How do you actually hit the shuttle straight over the net with this geometry?
It is a brilliant geometric puzzle that stumps almost everyone. If you use a standard intuitive grip on the racket, your logic is 100% correct.
So it would go sideways.
Yes. If your elbow is safely in front of your chest and you snap your forearm out, the racket face will be severely angled, and you will simply slice the side of the shuttle. It won't go straight, it will veer off court. But professional players solve this complex geometric problem with a hidden microscopic adjustment.
The slanted thumb grip.
Exactly, the slanted thumb grip.
Okay, I need you to explain the mechanics of the slanted thumb.
Let's look at the handle of a badminton racket. It is not perfectly round. It is an octagon. It looks like an elongated stop sign. It has wide, flat sides and narrower, slanted bevels connecting them.
Okay, I can picture that.
When an amateur prepares for a backhand, they naturally place their thumb flat on the widest part of the grip. But for this specific high-power backhand clear, professionals intentionally shift their thumb slightly so it rests on the narrower, slanted bevel right next to the flat side.
Wait, so they intentionally grip the racket crooked in their hand?
Yes. By rolling the racket in their fingers and placing the thumb on that specific slanted bevel, they introduce a built-in 30 to 45-degree angle compensation into the grip itself.
Oh, wow.
It pre-tilts or pre-opens the racket face. Therefore, when your elbow is safely tucked in front of your chest within the scapular plane and your forearm reaches full, violent extension snapping outward, that pre-tilted grip perfectly cancels out the awkward angle of your arm.
That is just...
Wow. As the racket meets the shuttle at its highest point, the face naturally and magically squares up perfectly to the net with absolute mathematical precision.
That is absolutely mind-blowing. The grip itself is doing the complex geometric math for you.
It is.
You don't have to consciously calculate the angle or contort your wrist mid-swing. Because you altered the angle at your fingertips before the swing even started, you can keep your shoulder in the safest, most powerful anatomical plane. You can snap your forearm with maximum uninhibited force, and the racket face automatically hits the shuttle dead center, perfectly parallel to the net.
It represents a perfect, elegant, biomechanical closed loop. You protect the vulnerable shoulder joint by staying in the scapular plane, you maximize angular momentum through the brake pad effect, and you utilize a static micro-adjustment in the grip to ensure perfect directional accuracy. It is engineering at the human level.
It is athletic engineering. But understanding all of this brings up a massive glaring question.
Why isn't it taught?
Yes. The user asks it in the notes, and honestly, if I'm listening to this, I'm asking it right now. If pinning the arm, pushing the elbow, using the virtual anchors, and relying on the small joints is so incredibly effective, if it cures debilitating shoulder pain, unlocks elite deception, and unleashes this professional level of power, why on earth don't coaches just teach pin your arm from day one of beginner classes?
A very valid question.
Why does every single beginner class for tennis, squash, or badminton start with the coach yelling, "Take a big swing, follow through all the way"?
It is what we can call the ultimate coaching paradox, and it reveals a deep systemic flaw in how we historically transfer physical skills and motor patterns.
A systemic flaw.
The AI in our sources provides a profound analysis of this teaching gap. It boils down to the traditional order of operations in athletic pedagogy. Traditional sports coaching operates almost exclusively on a large to small pedagogical philosophy.
Meaning you learn the gross motor movements, the big, unrefined muscular actions first, and then you try to refine the fine motor skills later.
Exactly. Think about a coach's primary objective on day one. Their goal isn't to create an elite athlete. Their goal is simply to get the beginner to hit the shuttle over the net so they don't get frustrated and quit.
Right, just to make it fun.
To clear the net, you need power. Beginners don't have refined fast switch fibers or timing. So coaches teach the big sweeping use of the large joints, the whole arm, the big hip rotation, to borrow that gross brute power.
The easy power.
The underlying intention is that once the player gets stronger, develops coordination, and understands the game, they will naturally begin to refine the movement, shrink the swing down, and transition to using the smaller joints for explosive speed.
But based on everything we've talked about, let me guess. That magical transition from gross movement to refined micro movement almost never actually happens.
The transition fails for the vast majority of players. Amateurs get permanently stuck in the big swing phase.
Why? Just habit.
The reason is neurological. Because the big sweeping swing works well enough to play a casual recreational game, the brain reinforces that movement pattern. It lays down thick myelin sheaths around those specific neural pathways. The gross movement becomes a deeply ingrained automatic habit.
That's hardwired.
Exactly. Years later, when a coach finally tries to teach them advanced finger power or the brake pad technique, the amateur's brain actively rejects it because the big swing is already hardwired as the default survival mechanism.
So if everyone gets stuck, what made the user in the notes so different? Why were they able to break the cycle?
The injury was the catalyst.
Right.
The severe shoulder pain acted as an insurmountable physical constraint. It completely short-circuited the deeply ingrained neural pathways. It literally forced the user to abandon the large to small progression.
Because they couldn't use the large joints at all.
Because the large joints were offline due to pain, they were forced into a small to large learning model. They had to figure out how to generate power using only the terminal nerves, the forearm, and the small muscles of the hand.
Wow.
The constraint forced them to accidentally bypass years of bad habits and jump straight to the elite micro movements.
That makes perfect sense. The constraint forced the evolution. But there's another layer to this coaching paradox that the sources dive into, and I find this particularly fascinating. It's about what the notes call the professional visual illusion.
Oh, this is a crucial insight into why coaches often verbally instruct one thing while physically doing another.
Explain that.
When you sit in the stands and watch a professional badminton or tennis player hit a massive clear or a serve, what does it look like they are doing?
It looks like they're taking a massive sweeping swing with their entire arm. Their arm reaches way up, the racket flashes, and their arm follows through all the way down to their opposite hip.
Right. It looks incredibly majestic, fluid, and continuous. It certainly doesn't look like they are abruptly slamming on the brakes midair.
Not at all.
But that visual fluidity is an illusion masking the underlying mechanics. What the human eye sees from the stands is the macro movement. But what is actually happening deep inside the professional's body is violent micro-braking.
Oh, I see.
Their core muscles, their lats, their rotator cuff micro-stabilizers, they are automatically braking and locking the upper arm at the exact millisecond of impact to create that lightning whip effect.
So what's all the rest of the swing, the follow-through?
The majestic follow-through you see is merely the natural dissipation of residual energy after the strike has already occurred. But the professionals have been executing this micro-braking since they were 5 years old. The motor pattern is so deeply internalized that they don't even consciously realize they are doing it.
Oh, wow. So when a professional player transitions into coaching and is teaching an amateur, they genuinely believe they are swinging their whole arm because that's what their swing looks like in the mirror or on video.
Yes. They teach the macro movement they can see, rather than the microscopic braking mechanism they intuitively feel.
Language fails the biomechanics. The coach verbally says, swing big, follow through, and the amateur takes the instruction literally.
Completely literally.
The amateur uses their slow shoulder muscles to drag the racket continuously through the air, completely missing the invisible, instantaneous snap that generates the actual power.
It's a tragic game of physical telephone.
This makes me think of utilizing this restricted arm technique as a deliberate training tool. Let's call it a hacker's constraint.
Hacker's constraint, I like it.
If you're an intermediate player in any sport and you're stuck in a plateau because of deeply ingrained bad habits, maybe the solution isn't to buy a better racket or try to add more complex movements to your swing. Maybe the secret is teaching by subtraction.
By subtraction.
Yeah, tie your upper arm to your ribs figuratively or literally with a resistance band and see what your forearm and fingers are biologically forced to figure out.
It is an extreme pedagogical tool, but the physics guarantee that it forces the correct neurological adaptation. If you completely remove the crutch of the large, slow muscles, the small, fast muscles have no choice but to evolve and take over.
Okay, we've exhaustively mapped out the backcourt, the massive clears, the flat drives, the lethal stick smashes. Let's complete the biomechanical map of the court.
Sounds good.
How does this universal rule of locking the big joints apply to the delicate, nuanced areas of the game? The front court, the drop shots, the tight net play, the desperate defensive lifts. Does this aggressive breaking concept still apply when you are just trying to lightly, delicately tap the shuttle over the net?
It absolutely applies. But the physical application of the constraint changes its shape depending on the specific requirement of the shot.
Okay.
The underlying principle that the large joints provide immovable stability while the small joints perform the dynamic work remains a constant law. Let's examine drop shots first.
A drop shot being where you wind up like you're going to hit a massive smash, but the shuttle just lightly clears the tape and dies right over the net.
Correct. If you utilize a big sweeping arm swing for a drop shot, you end up slowly pushing the shuttle over the net. Because the lever's so long, the motion is slow, it floats in the air, and your opponent can easily anticipate the trajectory.
Because they can see the whole slow motion.
But if you restrict the upper arm, if you break it violently, just like you would for a full smash at that optimal front-of-body contact point, your racket face slices or brushes the shuttlecock with an incredibly sharp, short, staccato motion.
So it looks exactly the same as a smash.
Exactly. The restricted arm prevents the lazy pushing motion, ensuring the shuttle drops steeply and deceptively, matching the exact visual rhythm of a smash.
What about right at the net? I'm thinking of those delicate spinning net shots where the players look like they are just softly tickling the feathers of the shuttlecock. You can't pin your arm to your ribs for those. You have to reach over the net.
True. For tight net play, the arm obviously must extend away from the body. You have to reach out to intercept the shuttle as high as possible before it drops below the net tape.
So the rule breaks there.
No, here is the key application of the rule. Was once the arm extends, it becomes a totally rigid, immovable stationary scaffold. It does not move forward to push, and it does not pull back. It locks in three-dimensional space.
It's just frozen.
100% of the manipulation, the intricate spin, the soft push, the redirection happens purely through the finger squeezing, relaxing, and rolling the grip. The arm is merely the heavy crane holding the delicate machinery in place.
The heavy crane holding the machinery. That makes sense. And what about defensive lifts? When someone hits a blazing smash right at your toes, and you have to dig it out and pop it way up high into their backcourt to buy yourself time to recover.
For defensive lifts, the arm is kept very tight to the body. It acts as a low, highly stable pivot point near the hip. You do not try to scoop the shuttle using the strength of your shoulder. It's too slow.
Because it's coming too fast.
Instead, you rely entirely on a sudden, explosive rotation of the forearm. Imagine turning a stubborn doorknob violently combined with a sharp squeeze of the fingers to pop the shuttle high and deep.
So the rule holds mathematically true across the entire spectrum of the game. Immobility and stability in the large joints create precision, deception, and explosive power in the small joints.
Consistently.
But in physics and sports, there are almost always edge cases. Is there any scenario where this rule is broken? Is the arm always locked as a brake pad? Are there any shots where you actually do want to swing your whole arm continuously through?
There is exactly one major, spectacular exception to the brake pad rule, and the sources are very clear about delineating it. The full heavy smash.
The highlight reel shot, the jump smash where the professional leaps 3 feet into the air, contorts their body like a bow, and shatters the sound barrier with the shuttle.
Exactly. The physics governing the full heavy smash are entirely different from the rest of the game. In this specific shot, The player is actively utilizing the absolute maximum rotational power of their entire anatomical kinetic chain. Their calves, thighs, hips, core, chest, and shoulder.
They're using everything.
The sheer kinetic energy generated by this full-body torque is so astronomically high that if the player attempted to abruptly break their upper arm in midair using a virtual anchor, the structural forces involved would literally tear their rotator cuff and shoulder capsule apart.
Oh, wow. The amount of force is so great that the concrete barrier of the brake pad would just structurally disintegrate. The joint would fail.
Precisely. For the full heavy smash, the arm must follow through completely. The swing has to continue past the body, often sweeping all the way down to finish by the opposite hip, solely to safely bleed off and dissipate that enormous violent energy over a longer period of time.
Oh, so it's a safety mechanism.
It is the only time the large joints are allowed a full, unrestricted release, and it is done purely for anatomical survival, not for generating extra power on the shuttle itself.
That is wild. It really puts into perspective just how much sheer force these athletes are generating in a fraction of a second.
It's staggering.
Okay, let's bring this massive biomechanical journey all together. We started this deep dive with a deeply counterintuitive premise: a painful injury magically making someone a better athlete.
Yep.
We explored how this agonizing constraint forced the player to stop using their massive, sloppy, inefficient shoulder swing.
Which accidentally engaged the physics of the brake pad effect, efficiently transferring massive angular momentum into the small, lightning-fast joints of the forearm and fingers.
And it corrected their spatial geometry without them even having to think about it. Because the tethered arm couldn't reach behind their head, they were physically forced to hit the shuttle out in the front of their body, optimizing their strike zone for leverage and gravity-assisted power.
All while magically pushing their shoulder joint into the scapular plane, finding the perfect anatomical angle that eliminated impingement and cured their pain completely.
We then saw how this exact same logic decodes the most complex, difficult shots in the game, like the backhand clear, by utilizing virtual anchors.
Like the crossbody tether of the non-dominant hand.
And brilliant geometric compensations, like the slanted thumb grip, to solve spatial problems.
It is an incredible story of accidental biomechanical discovery.
It really is. And I think the biggest takeaway here for you, the listener, whether you are actively trying to perfect a tennis serve, improve your golf swing, or just attempting to learn a complex new physical skill, the answer is very rarely try harder or use more brute muscle.
Almost never.
The secret to elite power and precision isn't brute force. It is ruthless, calculated efficiency. It is about building an immovable, stable foundation, eliminating every ounce of unnecessary movement, and letting the highly refined small joints do the talking.
It serves as a powerful reminder that our primal instincts to rely on our biggest, most obvious tools are often deeply flawed. True mastery in any discipline almost always lies in constraint, production, and highly focused energy transfer.
Exactly. Which leaves me with a final provocative thought for you to mull over. We've spent this entire deep dive examining how a physical constraint, a painful injury, accidentally forced a player into elite technique by forcibly stripping away their most powerful, relied-upon tool, that big arm swing. The loss forced them to innovate and discover a better way.
A completely better way.
Where else in your life might this principle profoundly apply? If you deliberately and artificially constrained your biggest advantage right now, let's say you slashed your massive budget on a creative project, or you banned yourself from using your usual comfortable vocabulary in your writing, or you forced yourself to abandon your go-to software at work.
Oh, that's a great thought.
Right. What hidden, hyper-efficient small joint skills might you be biologically or creatively forced to discover?
A fascinating and challenging question. Sometimes losing your biggest weapon is the absolute only way to find your sharpest one.
I couldn't have summarized it better myself. Until next time, keep diving deep.